I didn't discover the truth in one shattering moment. It didn't arrive with a loud crash or a sudden, devastating confession. No, it came to me quietly, insidiously, in fragments that seemed harmless at first. Small, puzzling details that refused to fit together. A faint, cold feeling in the pit of my stomach that I learned to ignore, to swallow down. For so long, I told myself I was safe. Safe with him. Safe within the life we had built together. A life that looked so perfect from the outside. People admired us. They trusted him, implicitly. They'd sigh and tell me how lucky I was. And I believed them because I wanted to. I needed to. He had this gift, this way of making the unexplainable sound perfectly reasonable. Whenever a question formed in my mind, whenever a date didn't line up or a story changed, he had an explanation ready. It was always calm, delivered with a patient smile, a gentle touch on my arm. "You're just tired, my love," he'd say. Or, "You're overthinking again. After everything I do for us." And I would nod, pushing that heavy, leaden feeling deeper down, because that's what love does. Love convinces you to protect the beautiful story you're living in, even as you begin to hear the first, faint sounds of it cracking. The changes, when they came, were so gradual they were almost imperceptible. They were small enough to dismiss, to forgive. He started working later, much later. His phone, which once sat carelessly on the table, became a permanent attachment to his person, face down, always on silent. Our conversations, once long and winding, became functional, clipped, wrapped in a new chill. But there was always an excuse, delivered with that same reassuring tone. Immense work stress, unprecedented pressure, the weight of providing. And every time a sliver of doubt escaped my lips, he'd look at me with such sincere eyes, reminding me of his love, of his devotion, of how he would never, ever hurt me. I craved peace more than I craved truth, so I learned to stay quiet. I perfected the art of silence. Then one utterly ordinary Tuesday, it happened. He slipped. Not a grand confession, not a caught-in-the-act moment of drama. Just a single, careless sentence, dropped into a conversation where he assumed I wasn't really listening. A name. A time. A place that contradicted everything he'd told me just the night before. And in that instant, the scattered, confusing pieces I'd been collecting for years suddenly snapped into a horrifying, clear picture. The late nights weren't about work. The distance wasn't about stress. He wasn't just telling me lies, he was living an entirely different life. And this hadn't been going on for weeks, or even months. The scale of it, the sheer longevity of the deception, took my breath away. For years, that first realization didn't bring tears. It brought a silent, ringing shock that froze me from the inside out. It was the kind of shock that makes the world go muffled and sharp at the same time, that forces your mind to become a frantic projector, replaying every cherished memory, every whispered promise, every vulnerable moment of trust, and painting them in the ugly, revealing light of truth. I confronted him, my voice unnervingly calm, because some desperate part of me needed to hear the words from his mouth. I needed to see him admit it, and he didn't. He looked directly into my eyes, the eyes he claimed to love, and he denied everything. That, perhaps, was the deepest cut of all. To watch someone dismantle your reality with such smooth, practiced lies, to treat your pain as a minor inconvenience, it breaks something fundamental in your soul. I didn't scream. I didn't weep. I didn't give him the storm of emotion he was so clearly waiting for, the chaos he knew how to navigate and twist back onto me. Instead, I just listened. I let him talk. I let him build his castle of lies even higher, brick by fragile brick. And as he spoke, a profound, icy clarity washed over me. His fear wasn't about losing me. It was about losing control over the narrative, over the perfect story he had authored for us both. So, I stopped reacting. My silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. It was observation. I began to watch, truly watch, with the detachment of a scholar studying a dangerous species. I noted patterns I'd been conditioned to ignore. I mapped timelines that made no sense. I collected facts, emails, receipts, digital breadcrumbs, not with frenzy, but with meticulous patience. I didn't rush to expose him. I let him feel secure, let him believe he had smoothed it over, because people reveal their truest, most entitled selves when they believe they've won.
And he did.
He grew careless, arrogant. He moved through our shared life with a renewed, swaggering confidence. And when the moment was right, when the foundation of his lies was complete but brittle, I didn't confront him in the privacy of our home, where words could be manipulated and tears could be weaponized. I presented the truth in a space where others were present, where his performance needed an audience. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I simply let the facts speak, one after another, in a calm, undeniable voice. And where his lies had lived so loudly, there was now only a deafening, hollow silence. He had nothing to say. No clever explanation. No last-minute twist. The control he cherished evaporated before him. And for the first time, I saw him feel what I had been carrying alone. Not pain, but utter, naked exposure. I didn't stay to watch the facade crumble. I didn't wait for the excuses to reform. I turned and I walked away, because I finally understood that real revenge isn't about inflicting suffering. It's about reclaiming your dignity, piece by stolen piece, and leaving with it held tightly in your own hands. Afterward, an unexpected thing happened. The noise that had been the constant soundtrack of my life, the white noise of anxiety, the echo of unanswered questions, the low hum of impending dread, just stopped. The silence was immense, heavy, almost unbearable at first. When you escape a cyclone, the sudden stillness can feel like its own kind of disturbance. I kept waiting for the phone to buzz with manipulative messages, with fake apologies, with blame. But nothing came. And slowly, day by day, I realized this silence wasn't empty. It was fertile ground. It was space. Glorious, terrifying space to breathe, to think, to remember who I was before I became a character in his story. People would ask me, later, how I could have missed it. How the signs weren't obvious. But betrayal isn't obvious when you're standing in the heart of it. It looks like love, just love that's sometimes confusing. It feels like trust, just trust that's being slowly, patiently eroded. He didn't just lie to me. He was a master architect of my own doubt, training me to distrust my own instincts. Understanding that was a painful education, but it was also my emancipation. Because once you see the machinery of manipulation, you can finally step out of its gears. Weeks later, through the inevitable grapevine, I heard he was telling his version of events. In this new story, he was the misunderstood victim. I was the cold, emotionally distant partner. I was unreasonable, impossible to please. For a fleeting moment, the old fire of anger flared. The urge to defend myself, to correct the record, to scream the truth from the rooftops, was a physical pull. But I didn't. I had already spoken my truth. Lies are vampires. They need the energy of engagement to survive. I simply turned off the lights and left them in the dark. Months drifted by. I focused on the quiet, unglamorous work of rebuilding. My routines, my health, the friendships I'd neglected. I stopped the endless mental replay of old arguments. I released the exhausting question of what I could have done differently. Because when someone makes a conscious, sustained choice to betray you, there is nothing you could have done to prevent it. That acceptance didn't breed bitterness. It built the foundation for my freedom. One evening, a message from him appeared. It wasn't angry or defensive. It was soft, dripping with a regret that sounded like an apology. He said he never meant to cause hurt, that he missed what we had, that he finally understood the pain he'd caused. I read the words with a detached clarity, no longer seeing them through a lens of hope or hurt. I recognized it for what it was, an apology without accountability, a sentiment without change, the final, desperate form of manipulation. I didn't reply, not out of hatred, but because I had quietly, completely outgrown him. The chapter was written, and I had no interest in rereading it. Closure didn't come from that message. It came from a series of small, internal decisions. It came from forgiving myself for staying as long as I did, from accepting that some people are simply incapable of admitting the full, ugly truth of themselves. And that was okay. I had become someone he could no longer confuse. Someone who listened to their own instincts first. Someone who could set a boundary without a ripple of guilt. I never set out to destroy his life. But by choosing my own peace, by refusing to play the villain or the victim in his drama, I removed the central character he needed to justify his narrative. And without my participation, his house of lies, built on sand, began to collapse under its own weight. You don't need to topple someone built on dishonesty. You just need to step gracefully out of the way and let the inexorable tide of truth come in. Starting over wasn't a montage. There was no dramatic music, no single turning point where the sun broke through the clouds.
It was quieter than that.
It was waking up and realizing the knot in my stomach was gone. It was laughing with a friend and hearing the sound of my own laughter, genuine and unforced. It was setting a boundary and feeling strong, not guilty. I stopped checking to see if he was watching my life. I stopped measuring my healing by his absence or his reactions. And in that self-contained peace, I finally found my footing. Trust returned, not in a flood, but in a slow, cautious trickle. First, trust in myself, in my judgment, in my resilience. Then, tentatively, trust in others. Not blind, desperate trust, but a careful, discerning trust. I learned that real trust isn't about believing someone will never let you down. It's about knowing, deeply knowing, that you will be okay, even if they do. That lesson didn't just change my relationships, it changed my entire world. I began to meet people who felt different. Conversations flowed, without hidden currents. Silences were comfortable, not charged with fear. There was no need for decoding, for reading between the lines. This healthy connection felt unfamiliar, even strange at first, but I learned that unfamiliar doesn't mean wrong. Sometimes it just means new, and true, and good. Then one day, I realized a full week had passed without him crossing my mind. No anger, no residual sadness, not even a flicker of curiosity. It was a neutral, clean absence. And in that quiet realization, I understood what winning truly looked like. It wasn't about revenge or his downfall. It was about this profound, unshakable freedom. When someone no longer holds the keys to your emotions, they simply vanish from your inner world. Life, with its odd symmetry, placed us in the same room one final time. There were no words exchanged, just a wide space and a lifetime of understanding between us. He looked the same, restless, performing for an invisible audience, his eyes searching for something or someone to anchor to. And I felt nothing. No victorious pride, no old wound aching. Just a clear, calm finality. Some people never grow, because growth requires looking in the mirror, and that was a reflection he could never bear. My confidence didn't roar. It whispered. It was in the not reacting, the not explaining, the choosing of peace over the desperate need to prove a point. The betrayal he designed to break me became, instead, my brutal and most valuable tutor. It taught me awareness. It taught me the strength of unbreakable boundaries. I would never choose that lesson again, but I will forever respect the strength it forged in me. If you're listening to this, trapped in that same fog of doubt, afraid to leave because the proof isn't perfect or the path isn't clear, hear me now. You don't need a smoking gun. You don't need anyone's permission. You just need one clear moment of clarity and the courage to follow it. The calmest revenge is simply a refusal to beg for the truth, a refusal to chase after love that isn't real, a refusal to stand on ground where you are not respected. He played a long game for years. That is his truth. But what ultimately shocked everyone, perhaps even him, was not my collapse. It was my silent, steady rise from the ashes he created. I didn't fall apart. I rebuilt, alone, in the quiet. And now I live a life where betrayal has no access, where lies find no purchase, and where a deep, unshakable calm is my greatest, most powerful weapon. And that is how the story ends.